Hey, Clemson family. Well, the Tigers played at least half a really good game up in Boston against the Boston College Eagles. That was good enough, however, to move up in the polls.
I'm Daniel Shirley. Let's talk about the good, the linebackers, the bad, the offensive line, and everything in between.
I'm Bill Zimmerman. Welcome to episode 31 of the Supreme Alway podcast. You can find all our episodes at our homepage, clemsonkickoff.com. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Both of those are at Clemson Kickoff. And thanks to those of you checking us out on youtube.com/Clemson Kickoff. Give us a quick subscribe there to keep up with us whenever we post and update, usually twice a week. Well, the final score looked great up in Boston, but everyone seemed to start out inconsistently. Both sides of the ball for the Tigers. The defense did get settled in first. I don't know. I may have had more crazy texts than you this week.
Yeah, I kind of was busy with my work at The Athletic, so I couldn't really dig into it and be the usual crazy Daniel during the game. But there was a little bit that irked me. I'll start with the offensive line, Bill. I thought the offensive line took a big step back. I know that the stats look okay, and they rushed for 144 yards and 4 yards per carry. Will Shipley averages 3 yards a carry, 3.3 to be exact. And it just felt like there was a struggle to run the ball. And that really surprised me in this game. So it felt like the running game and the offense as a whole took a step back from what we saw against Wake Forest and what we saw against NC State.
Is it just me, or does it feel like DJ Uyunglele is breaking away runs more often than the running backs?
Yeah, it sure felt like that way, Bill. I mean, I know DJ had the long run in the fourth quarter. He had a couple of other really nice runs. And DJ ran the ball well, 12 carries for 69 yards, almost 6 yards a carry. It felt like the running backs and the interior of the offensive line just never got going. And even early, there was some pressure on DJ, a couple of sacks. That felt like a struggle as well. Now, DJ, I thought, played really well. He threw the ball well. And the passing game, I thought, was in good shape, but they've got to get this running game going if they're going to be the kind of team that Clemson fans want this team to be.
A friend of mine texted me from up in Wisconsin during the game. He's got Shipley on his fantasy team in a league that I used to be in, and he's like, why do they use him so funny? And I just said, they're always going to want to balance the carries. They're always going to want to spread the ball around. So I don't know if it's just random or if it's something in the way the teams are gearing up to stop these Clemson running backs. Will Shipley, Phil Maffa, certainly worthy of that attention, and it may be opening things up for Uyunglele as a result a little bit. Very interesting. By the way, be sure to hit that subscribe button for us on youtube.com/Clemson Kickoff. So this is the 10th straight game now that Clemson has outrushed its opponent. Dabo Swinney said tonight, we're recording this Sunday, mentioned that on his conference call tonight. A lot of that this year really has to do with a strong defense, doesn't it?
It does, and here I am bashing the running game, and they're rushing the opponent. But the defense, I thought, was a little slow Saturday as well. Maybe kind of sleepwalking through the game a little bit. But once the defense woke up, and you even heard the broadcast mention it, especially in the second half, the first series of the second half, Sean McDonough said, this defense looks like it's playing with more intensity right now after what we saw in the first half. And that was pretty clear. And they started to bring more pressure and got after the Eagles a little bit and really took control of the game. Nobody has run the ball in this team so far this year. And that's really good to see with this defense. And we'll see if they can keep it up. Wake Forest, I guess, had the most success running it. Wake Forest's attack still was mostly about the passing game. But NC State couldn't run it. Boston College couldn't run it last night. Georgia Tech couldn't run it. And so it feels like the defense is really doing its job against the run. And obviously that starts with that dominant group up front.
Tyler Davis sure looked good once again last night. KJ Henry also again looked really good. Davis looked really good rushing the passer and applying pressure. And even when he wasn't the guy who got the sack, he was often the result of a play that went sideways for the Eagles and really kept them off balance. And, the Eagles gained yardage in spurts and sputters and, hit some nice mid-range passes. I think one of the sentiments I've seen on Twitter quite a bit has been, enjoy the NFL, Zay Flowers. It's reminiscent of when Dean Smith wanted Dale Davis to go to the NBA a little bit, isn't it? But the front four and also the linebackers looking good in a lot of regards.
And look, let's just say this first: Zay Flowers is an NFL player. I mean, I don't think there's any doubt about that. He is a really talented player, and you can focus on him as much as you want, but he's going to get his catches and his carries and his plays in. Those linebackers, Bill, are playing really, really well. And I don't think it's just the first group. Keith McGuire has played well throughout this season. Bentley has played well when he's got his chances. But those first three have been outstanding. You know, you and I were kind of talking about this before we started recording. You know, we were there in the late 80s, early 90s, and Clemson had a bunch of NFL linebackers in that group. I'm not saying they are that talented yet or they're going to rise to that level, but it feels like that, where they're athletic, they can cover, they can get after the quarterback, they can stop the run, they can do a little bit of everything. And that's what you're seeing from this group. Obviously, it helps to have that dominant group up front where that opens up the plays for the linebackers, but those linebackers and that defensive line are working really, really well together right now.
Seems like they just need to get the DBs back on the field, right? And it's an interesting note Sunday night also from Sweeney's teleconference that he says this is right now the healthiest that this team has been all year. Hopefully he's talking about that defensive backfield, getting some guys out there next week against Florida State with some large receivers and a quarterback who's really good at improvising.
Yeah, let's see. I mean, let's hope that you can get guys back. I mean, Sheridan Jones and Malcolm Green and those guys who've been out the last couple of weeks. And, you know, even Saturday, RJ Mickens is out, Tyler Venables is out. So there's 4 key defensive backs who didn't play Saturday. So if they get those guys back, then watch out for this defense, because I think you're seeing the secondary play better after what we saw against Wake Forest. It was better against NC State. It was better last night. Wiggins made a couple of really good plays. I think those guys are stepping up, but you need to get everybody healthy for this stretch run. And if they can get everybody back, this defense can be even more dominant than it's been the last couple of weeks. I mean, we saw what Xavier Thomas can bring to the team in short bursts on Saturday night. So it'd be great if you could get all these guys back at one time.
And it just seemed like they were cohesive, right? I mean, yeah, there were the misses here and there, or there were the guys who got open here and there, but they don't have those Achilles heel of Wake Forest and Louisiana Tech just throwing it long and completing passes. You haven't seen the screen game really damage this defense like it did the first 2 games of the year. Now you've got back-to-back games where against NC State and Boston College, obviously NC State a better team than Boston College by a good bit, but the point being that there's no Achilles heel, there's no real, hey, here's the way to bust these guys up, right? They can't be beaten short consistently. They can't be beaten long consistently. And the running game also just tends not to get established against these guys. That's certainly a trend that's going to have to continue against Florida State coming up this week. So check us out on Twitter or on Instagram. Both of those accounts are at Clemson Kickoff. You'll see us tweeting quite a bit, retweeting news as it happens, and we're just having some fun on Instagram for now. Now, that offense took a while to get going. You really don't want to see that happen against a better team. But by the time they did get it going, they decided to keep it going. They got a little bit criticized for throwing it often late in the game, up 3 scores. But you kind of wanted to see them maintain that momentum. And then they tried some new things with freshman Antonio Williams too, didn't they?
They did. I'm impressed by him more and more every week, Bill. I mean, he is becoming a really huge part of this game plan. It's almost like, well, we need a big play here. Where's Antonio? You know, other guys are making plays too. I mean, Davis Allen had a big catch. Bo Collins, I know he had the drop on the first drive. That was a pretty throw from DJ. But then he came back and had a huge catch on 3rd down that set up the Joseph and got a touchdown. So, you know, these guys are making plays, but Antonio Williams is just impressing me more and more every week with what he's able to do. Bill, it's not just one thing. It's not like he's a one-trick pony. He's not just a slot guy, or he's not a jet sweep guy or anything like that. He seems like he can make plays no matter where they put him on the field, kind of like what we were talking about with Zay Flowers with Boston College. He's got a chance to be special. And Todd Blackledge mentioned this Saturday night during the broadcast too. It's not like he was an early enrollee. He just got to campus in June. So imagine what he's going to be with a full off season and everything that entails with this program. I mean, the sky is the limit for him coming up the next couple of seasons.
I always love to see that Uyunglele to Collins connection. He just always looks very natural when he's throwing the ball to Collins, his former high school teammate, despite them being a year apart. He's really developing a rapport with Antonio Williams. Ngata had a good game. They're connecting as well. Ngata still doesn't have that ability like we've seen from some previous Clemson receivers, Justin Ross, Mike Williams, to use that wide-shouldered upper body that he's got and really shield off the defensive back, screen them out of the play, and make sure he gets the ball. But he's got some talent, without a doubt. No, I'm not going to finish that particular phrase I was about to say for fear of jinxing it. But there's a broad array of talent, and they're starting to work Adam Randall into. I think, though, what we really need to see is that running game just start looking downhill. I mean, they're looking good. They're not looking awful, but you really want to see some breakaways get going. We saw Shipley and what he was able to do early against Wake Forest and how that can really change a game. And it's just not happening with quite the consistency of maybe that Wayne Gallman era, certainly not like the Travis Etienne era with the home run potential. But the talent is very, very similar for Shipley, for Maffa, and they have the chance, if they can just get the schemes down right, whether it's putting holes in the right places, whether it's them timing their way through the creases in the line, whatever it might be, you just want to see that final little extra half step in that running game, that extra half gear that kind of ramps it up into fully operational, right?
No doubt. Obviously, the offensive line has to play better. I was reading some of the grades from the team and some of the websites from after Saturday's game, and the offensive line didn't grade out well. And that was pretty clear watching the game. Anybody with eyes can kind of see that. But the talent is there. I mean, there's no doubt the talent is there. And I think the offensive line has been a lot better this year than it was last year. Bill, and I don't even think anything that we saw Saturday night, quote unquote, struggles, didn't look anything like what we saw last year. I mean, we're not talking about those kinds of struggles. You just want to see some more consistency from the running game. And, let's run the ball up the middle and don't get 2 yards every time. Let's get 5 here or 4 or 6, or every once in a while, let's break one off and see what this running game can be. Because right now it just feels like it's a bit of a struggle. It needs to be better if this is going to be a championship team. There are going to be times at some point in this season where they're going to need a 4-minute offense. Run the ball and let's get some first downs and let's run clock and let's keep this other team off the field. And I don't know right now that there's a lot of confidence that this team can do that. Everything else feels like it's there. But that running game just needs to be just a little bit better for this team to take the next step.
Really do want to continue to compliment the O-line, by the way, for buying a lot of time for Uyunglele to operate that passing game. Yep. It's one of the 2 toughest things on the field for sure. The ability for an offensive line to do it all against front sevens defensively that are designed to really apply pressure. And part of the reason front sevens are designed that way is the game is so tough on defensive backs. And that's what Clemson's DBs are seeing week in and week out, that offenses are designed to spread the field and use every square yard horizontally and vertically that they possibly can. So I don't want to be too rough on these crews because that's just kind of the nature of the game. Those are 2 places where it's toughest to be 100%, right? So we'll see how they do. And certainly that offensive line, getting back to them, is doing a great job of giving Uyunglele the time that he sorely lacked last year. And that's, I think, the biggest difference that we're seeing.
Again, we're talking about the offensive line, and we're kind of nitpicking here. I mean, those yards that DJ had count. I mean, you can say, well, take these yards out. Well, those yards count. I mean, so we're kind of nitpicking as we go through this. But, and again, it wasn't anything like what we saw last year. It was just a bit of a struggle to get going on Saturday night. If you have those same kinds of struggles at Florida State or against Syracuse or at Notre Dame, which looks like it's improving, will you still be able to pull out the win and kind of sneak out of there with a victory? We'll see, but hopefully that the offensive line and the offense will be just that much better as they move forward through the second half of the season.
Well, if the polls are to be believed, the Tigers are improving overall. They moved up to the number 4 spot tonight in the AP poll, surpassing Michigan, who had a rough first half against Indiana, but then pulled away as you would expect. I mean, not a very different game than Clemson had against Boston College. If you look at the score, at least, I didn't get to watch Michigan. So maybe earning a little more respect overall. And possibly part of that is people just can't argue with the numbers. I saw what was the stat that the team put out on Instagram today. Top 15 in the country is a combined 80 something and 3. And by the way, 2 of those 3 losses are to the Clemson Tigers.
I mean, people are going to downgrade the ACC. That's what college fans do, and that's fine. But Wake Forest and NC State are good teams. And as long as they keep winning, that helps Clemson's cause. And they both got wins on Saturday. I know Wake Forest was a little bit easier than NC State's, but Wake Forest bounced back the week after it lost to Clemson and beat Florida State. And then NC State beat Florida State on Saturday. So those teams keep winning and keep moving up the polls. It just makes Clemson's resume that much stronger.
I was really pleased, real quick, to see that NC State did play well and get the win against Florida State. However, losing Devin Leary, it might be tough for them to stay near the top of the Atlantic Division race and to stay in that national top 25. So be sure to follow us, by the way, on your favorite podcast app or on YouTube. Hit that like button wherever you are. It helps us keep this a free podcast, and that way we can keep you updated. We have got a great guest lined up for our next episode. It's someone who can do a good job of helping us preview that upcoming primetime showdown in Tallahassee. Real quick, Daniel, what are you going to be looking for this week as they move toward that showdown at FSU?
I really want to see how the secondary, who plays, right? How healthy can this secondary be? Clemson played without 4 key members of the secondary on Saturday, and I thought stepped up, but I want to see them get healthy and get everybody out there at one time and see what this defense can be.
Took the words right out of my mouth, and then I also want to see if Brian Brzee is going to get back in there this week. If that's someone who Coach Sweeney is saying, hey, this is the healthiest the team has been all year. Boy, would it be nice to have both Brzee and Davis in there, Ororo kind of stepping in behind them. And of course, Trey Williams looked pretty good this week, so maybe he's getting back up to speed. When you got sort of a 4-headed monster at defensive tackle, so to speak, that can really help set the tone up front and keep Jordan Travis from just slipping straight through the middle when he needs to escape the pocket.
Look, that defensive front is really good, and it's good in whatever combination is out there. But you want to see that front line be together, and we haven't been able to see that this year. It'll be a lot of fun if we are able to see that. Then there's more depth, and guys aren't having to play as many plays, and they can rest, and then fresh guys get after the quarterback more often. So that'll be key as well.
And Xavier Thomas, hopefully, is going to check out well after that short stint in Boston, and will be able to contribute a little more in Tallahassee as well. That would be great to see. Well, we are glad you found us, Clemson family. Again, we're on all the major podcast apps. We're on Twitter and Instagram. We're on Facebook also. And of course, on YouTube is where most of y'all are finding us, youtube.com/Clemson Kickoff. Looking forward to that next episode previewing Florida State. I'm Bill Zimmerman.
I'm Daniel Shirley. Go Tigers.
Yep.
Yeah, you're good.
No, it was the software that time.